Welcome to Gorilla Sports Off Court. I am Liv Moods, and in just a moment, joined by Brandon Cristal. And this is presented by Trusted American Mortgage. Trusted American's salary-based mortgage consultants want to help you get into a better interest rate and lower your monthly payments. So head to trustedamerican.com to see how they can help you save some money today.
Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome in, everybody, to another Gorilla Sports Off Court. I'm Liv Moods. That's Brandon Cristal, and we have much to discuss today. There's been some changes that have happened in the NBA as a whole. We've got some words from Kroenke about all the things that have happened within the Denver organization over the last couple of weeks. Brandon Cristal was actually there this morning, so we've got the inside scoop there, and we've got some clips we're going to play for you. I also asked yesterday on Twitter, X, if you will. I will always call it Twitter.
Me too.
Yeah, I just can't help myself. But went to X and asked everybody for their NBA playoff hot takes. I'm going to feature some of my favorites right here on the show because I got some great hot takes from you guys. And then we'll just talk about the playoff picture as a whole and also the Denver Nuggets. As we know, the matchup is set. They are facing the Los Angeles Clippers, the 5th seed in the Western Conference. The Nuggets ended up the 4th seed after a dominating win against the Houston Rockets. So there's a lot to talk about. But first, I want to toss it to you, BK. You were at Ball Arena today. You got to hear from Kroenke. Right off the bat, I tuned in and I was also able to hear what he had to say. But what was your immediate impression hearing from him today?
Well, I think you appreciate, because Josh didn't do this last week. We know he talked to Vic Lombardi, who obviously is at Altitude. They put it out on, I presume, Altitude stuff, but also on the Nuggets social channels. We saw it about 3.5 minutes, and he just kind of went through his decision. And he said one of the reasons he wanted to talk today was that he wanted to maybe dispel some of the rumors. Said some things were accurate, including the idea that he had considered this before in November around Thanksgiving. And you and I were doing post-game shows and doing these shows, and you could sense the panic apparently wasn't just felt by fans.
No, it was
or the lack of cohesion.
It was in-house as much as it was out of house.
Clearly. and then Josh also said that, and we'd heard this report, that around the All-Star break, but they had won 8 in a row, even though Nikola Jokic pointed out that it wasn't necessarily against great teams that they were beating, and maybe they were fooling themselves a little bit, because he could sense it as well. But that he wanted to get up, address why he made these moves. Says it right off the top. He said this isn't fair to Calvin or to Michael Malone, basically meaning a lot of people's fingerprints are on it, including his own, and that he maybe needed to pay a little more attention to what was going on, and was even asked about the transition, or one of the things that he's learned going through this in general. He said, when there's a transition, I need to be more hands-on, because he does help his dad run the Rams.
Yeah.
He runs the Nuggets and Avs, and he is much more, I think, the point person on Arsenal than his dad is. And then I guess they both kind of are on the Rapids, but Josh is there too as well. It's just lower, let's be honest. And so I think everybody appreciated. He talked for a half hour. He was pretty forthcoming. But to take ownership and not just throw blame at Michael Malone or throw it at Calvin Booth or throw it at the players, but to say this is my fault as much as anyone's. We know how that goes, though, too. It's when your name's on the door or on the building, more or less, you're not going anywhere. Like, same reason Jerry Jones isn't firing himself.
Well, and I really did appreciate him taking some of that accountability, because I do think it's very easy in this moment to blame Calvin Booth for his role in this, blame Coach Malone for his role in this. But Kroenke also said, hey, we missed a step here in the cultural disconnect. But for months, I've been able to sense and feel, and I was going to resurface this, and maybe I'll have, we'll make like some sort of social clip, but I made a video January 29th where I was sitting on my couch. The influenza A was through our home, so I looked a mess. But I said, don't be shocked if we find out.
I thought it was B for sure. I thought for sure it was B, because I know how sick y'all were.
It was A.
Yeah, I thought it was B, but I was wrong.
It was influenza A. And in this video, I said, don't be shocked if we find out there are some things going on behind closed doors that we don't know that would explain why this season has looked the way it has. That was January 29th. It is now April, and the pot is basically boiling over. So I do think it was very important to have Kroenke speak and kind of address some of the things. Of course, the day that it happened, it's hard to talk when you still have got games going on, but we've got this week break now where he can address some of the things. And one of the things that kind of it made me realize before we get to playing some of the things that Kroenke said was I also think a lot of fans were quick to say, trade this player, trade that player. But if you're Kroenke, you're sitting there going, it's not an issue with the product. The product is not the problem. It's all the stuff in between. It's the coaching, it's the front office. And so it's very interesting the more we learn that it's like, there's a reason they probably weren't quick to get rid of Michael Porter Jr. because they knew if you put Michael Porter Jr. in a different situation, in a different environment, you may get a better product out of him. We're starting to see that with the team as a whole. Over the last 3 games, I have loved what I have seen from this Denver Nuggets team. And it's no coincidence that you get rid of that and all of a sudden you're getting the Nuggets ball that everybody has been wanting to watch all season.
Well, and that's where I should give fans credit, give you credit, and in some ways give the team credit. You guys sensed that something was off, and the idea that Malone maybe had lost the team. I know I said I'm not sure he ever had it, and we talked about the way he handles Jamal Murray. It's funny when you're like, oh, he's going to treat Joker and Jamal different. Well, you're going to treat Joker different than everybody. Jimmy Johnson used to have that saying, you know, the Hall of Fame football coach, that you're all equal, but you're not the same. That's why when a guy named Swervin Curbin Richards fell asleep in a meeting, he got cut. If Emmitt Smith falls asleep in a meeting, they wake him up and say, hey, don't fall asleep in meetings when you're the NFL's all-time leading rusher. At that point, one of the best running backs in the league. So you're not going to treat Joker or even Jamal the way you're going to treat Peyton Watson. But that doesn't mean that you're going to treat them completely differently. And because Joker is such a good player, it's the same stuff with Greg Popovich and Tim Duncan. When you can get on your best player, it makes the coach's job that much easier when they aren't a diva prima donna that can't get scolded during practice or whatever it may be. And so I think that clearly there was stuff going on, and maybe in part because Josh is running all these different things with his dad and isn't always there. They didn't do they did a good job of kind of keeping it in house, because we'd be in the locker room and it wasn't the same as it was when you're winning, where it's like, hey, what are we doing? You know, and I think KCP being gone is part of that. Bruce Brown, Jeff Green, like that.
They did a phenomenal job of keeping it in house. I just have a really large sixth sense. So I was kind of doing more like assuming. I wasn't going off of what anything that had particularly happened that made me go, that's off. It was just an overwhelming feeling. But to your point, they did a really great job of keeping this away from the public.
But that team 2 years ago was extremely close. Like they'd be on the road and 8 of them would be going out to dinner. I just don't think this team was like that. And so in some ways you do have to give Josh credit. Look, he makes a move. He said, plenty of people are thinking I'm crazy. And then they win 3 games in a row. They secure their playoff seeding, because had they have dropped any or a couple of those games, they would very much likely be in the play-in because of what happened around them. And so I think that it is a credit in the short term that he made that move, because he wasn't ready to just throw the towel in on this year. That's one of the things that he brought up kind of early on in his press conference.
Yeah.
Do we want to hear that, I guess?
I do. I do think we want to hear that. I think the people want to hear that. So let's hear from Kroenke on not wanting to throw in the towel and maybe not wanting to dive right into making a decision on coaching. But obviously there's a reason that this decision was made. So let's check out his thoughts on the matter.
Thoughts aren't there because this season's not over. We just finished the season like a freight train, from what I could tell. I think last Wednesday, was a big step in just shifting the energy and getting past that first game without Coach Malone at the helm. And I thought our group did that brilliantly. Then you came back here Friday night to play a playoff team right next to each other in the standings. And it was one of those nights that, in the NBA season, you have to grind through. And so, that first half was a little bit of a slog. I thought our energy was great. We played through it, came through out in the third quarter, started to get back to certain brands of basketball. And then all of a sudden you saw, as Coach Adelman said, you saw the bread and butter start to take over at the end of the game, which was the Jamal and Yoke 2-man game. And then fast forward to yesterday, and, I didn't think that anybody in the group really knew what to expect, because, Houston's clinched their spot. They're in a different position than us, not playing for their playoff life. And, were they going to play their players? And so, I was actually pleased to find out that they were going to play their players because I think our guys were ready for a chance to go against a very good team above them in the standings. And I think we came out with the right mindset in the first half that showed a group that still has a lot of resolve and a lot of belief of where they're headed this year.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was easy to assume in that moment that you were throwing in the towel, given making such a dramatic change. But it also speaks to, I think we're learning now that the Kroenkes don't do anything hastily. This was something that had been brewing. This was something that was they didn't wake up one morning and say, this needs to happen. This was something that had been festering for some time.
Yeah. And so Josh did, he said that reporting that was out there was true, that in November he thought about it. In February, right around the All-Star break, he thought about making this move. And then I asked a question. We're going to get the answer to the second question I asked. I kind of asked a two-parter only because I wanted to react. And I said, not react. I was reacting to what he said. I said, hey, to clarify real quick, were you going to make the move on both of them in November and or February? And he was like, yeah. And then he kind of went into it as to, the thinking behind it a little bit more. But then I also asked, because we're looking forward and we understand a coach search is a little more straightforward. We just know the coaches that are out there. Mike Budenholzer just got let go today.
Mm-hmm.
That guy's got a ring from just a couple of years ago. Frank Vogel is a consultant right now, I want to say for the Mavs, if I'm not mistaken, but he won a ring just a couple of years ago in the bubble. Like, there are championship coaches that are out there. There's good coaches that are out there. Chauncey Billups is not available. He signed an extension with the Blazers. So the King of Park Hill will not be the Nuggets' next head coach. Can't say he'll never have the job, but just like Kyle Shanahan, he's not coming home anytime soon. And so you still kind of have an idea. David Adelman, clearly a candidate. There's some other coaches that, not just a couple that I just mentioned, but assistants that have ties to the Nuggets and maybe just up and comers that are out there. But GM, they just don't talk about it the way, like, there's people out there. We saw today where David Griffin, who had been the GM with the Cavs for a long time, he might even been the GM when LeBron was drafted, although I can't swear, but early in LeBron's career, he was fired by the Pelicans. They're already talking to Joe Dumars.
Mm-hmm.
And so Joe Dumars, of course, Pistons legend. He and Isaiah were, the keys to those bad boys teams. And then he helped build the Pistons championship team that Chauncey was on. But, you're not going to have those jobs forever typically. And so he's been out there and available, and now he may land with New Orleans. Point being, other than Bob Myers, who's on TV, you hear that Tim Connelly might have an out in his contract. And so my question was, do you want your GM, because your last three have all been first-time GMs. Masai Ujiri was a first-time GM, Tim Connelly a first-time GM, and then from within you promoted Calvin Booth, who was on Tim Connelly's staff for a couple of years. So what kind of factor or decision influence will it influence the decision to have a GM that has done this job before?
Yeah, absolutely. The GM, I don't think there's much of a rush there, but the and coaching right now doesn't seem to, I mean, obviously in the offseason you address it, but right now you've got Adelman doing exactly what he needs to do, and that's helping this team win basketball games. It seems like a very simple concept, but that was fleeting a few times during the season. So want to address this comment really quick. You guys were about the only ones talking about possible problems. The rest of the media don't want to go there for some reason. So what's the point of the media? Here's the deal. We've been very transparent on this show, BK. And I have to tell you, it is a very difficult position to be in. And I actually spoke about this weekend, and it kind of, I now can tie this into something else, that I got a personal thank you from Russell Westbrook, got to shake his hand. He basically said, I've seen your stuff. I've watched your stuff. Thank you for having my back. I know it's not easy. I appreciate you. And so it's a very tough position to be in the media world, especially when you have strong opinions about a lot of things. I'm not the type of person that just sits there and analyzes stats. And I also certainly don't blow smoke up the butts of my favorite team. I love them, but I'm hard on them because I love them. And I do think a lot of times when you're covering a team and that's your one sole focus, you do tend to get a little bit maybe naive, a little jaded in how you think and view this team. But at the end of the day, I knew, given the roster that this team had, that their season didn't make sense. It wasn't that I was like, screw this, throw in the towel, I'm over it, I'm done. No, I love this team. BK knows I'm stress texting him the entire time. I love the Denver Nuggets, but I also am not going to be the type of reporter or cover this team in such a way that doesn't feel authentic. I was authentically very stressed out, just like any other Denver Nuggets fan. I was authentically a little pissed off at the way that their season was unfolding at the beginning stages of the year. So, yeah, I think it's very important to be very transparent and honest. I do think there's a fine line between being honest and transparent and being disrespectful, and I never try to go that direction. But I do think, just like any other Nuggets fan, I was not going to sit here and just pretend like I wasn't concerned. There were large concerns. Jamal Murray's first half of the season performances were extremely streaky and concerning. Their defensive schemes were concerning. And guess what? Turns out I wasn't the only one concerned about it. So was Nikola Jokic. So yes, these players have they have to be a little bit political in some of their responses when they've got a camera in their face, but I don't necessarily have to be. I can be just as stressed out as every other Nuggets fan and talk about the highs and the lows. And I'm not going to only focus on the highs and not address the lows, because that's part of the game. There's a lot of really great moments and there's a lot of really bad ones. And I think everyone here at Guerrilla Sports does a really good job of just like being honest and authentic. And we're not going to be the media group that's just butterflies and rainbows all the time, because that's not reality. Okay. If you're a Denver sports fan, it is not always butterflies and rainbows. So my show certainly won't appear that way. So we appreciate you for always tuning in and being a part of this. But yeah, I think it's very important that you keep it real and keep it 100 all the time. And you say things with your chest. Sometimes they age like milk and sometimes they age like fine wine. And part of being in this business is just saying everything with your chest and backing everything you say with information and facts, but also not being afraid to share your opinion and doing so in a respectful way. So if you feel like you've gathered that from this show, that is exactly what we wanted. And I appreciate you for always tuning in. So yeah, I think I wouldn't say they were red flags, but there were orange flags for sure that were like, okay, this could be something. But I do think oftentimes we're hoping for the best. So we kind of try to pretend like, oh, it's not as bad as we think. Everything's going to be okay. But the reality is, it's stressful, and there's things that were concerning. Kroenke talked about a few other things.
Yeah, I do want to just follow up on your point about just kind of the way we cover the team.
Yeah.
And so you were on it, and a lot of our great viewers and listeners were as well, like sensing that something was off.
Mm-hmm.
There's people who've been critical of Michael Malone for a long time, but I think that I was giving him the benefit of the doubt when I would look at the roster, because everyone wanted to trade MPJ. They wanted to trade, we couldn't trade Jamal Murray, but they wanted to do this, do that. And it was like, just calm down. You have the best player in the world. If Jamal Murray's right, Russ is giving you something you didn't have. If Strother's healthy, if Peyton Watson's healthy, if AG's healthy, all those things. So that's why I wasn't in a hurry I could have taken or left Calvin Booth. I didn't think he did anything earth-shattering one way or the other, but Malone is the best coach in the history of the franchise. And so it was like, okay, can he figure it out? He has a really smart staff. He has the best player and everything goes through him. So let's just wait and see, because when you get to the playoffs, you've got young teams, you've got teams that haven't been there, you've got teams that are banged up. And so I just didn't realize truly what was going on behind the scenes. And then talking to people about how much Malone and Booth really weren't getting along over the last, almost 2 years, and heard some stories out there, some of which I can't really share, but of really just how bad it was.
Yeah.
And so I think that has now come to light a little bit more, but you do have to credit Michael Malone for winning as many games as they did.
Of course.
Because
I said that a few times, like, given all the issues that they had, it's quite impressive that they maintained a top seed in the Western Conference, especially considering how competitive the Western Conference is. So I want to give credit where it's due. Of course, I credit these players for doing their best to keep it in-house and still showing up and still winning basketball games. I credit Malone for, given the tensions and the beef that was there, and it was kind of suffocating, it seems, was still coaching and still helping this team win games. But then it just makes your brain go, how much better could they have been if they weren't dealing with these issues? And that's what I kept saying all year. They are too good for this. I'm looking at the season going, we're dropping games to the Clippers, which we're going to talk about in a second. They're dropping games to the Clippers. They're dropping games to Washington. It just didn't, the math was not mathing. And that's what made my brain go, something's up. Something's up here.
I don't know how many people did see this. I now get the Sunday Denver Post, even though when they called and offered it, or said, hey, you're getting this. I'm like, I've already gotten it in the past as part of my digital subscription.
Right.
I didn't want it then. I still don't want it. I love newspapers, but I don't need to hold them anymore because I read stuff
Right.
almost exclusively on my iPad or my phone. Nonetheless, this is both in the digital and print version. You got to give credit to Michael Malone. He's not the first person to do this, but he sent out a really nice thank you note, thanking the Cronkies, thanking the fans, thanking the players, understanding how great his run here was.
And it was great.
I sent him a message on Friday wishing him well and telling him how much I enjoyed covering him, and heard back from him Saturday, just, with a thank you and all that. And I appreciated that he texted me back.
Absolutely.
But to spend his own hard-earned dollars, and we know that he's doing better than a lot of folks. And, when head coaches get fired, but they're one of the 5 highest paid coaches in the league, he's got 2 more years left on his deal. He's going to be fine. He'll still make his mortgage payments and all that. It's when assistants, regardless of sport, basketball, football, hockey, baseball, when the head guy gets fired, and if everyone else gets fired, then you're scrambling, and those guys are only making a couple $100,000.
Right.
And that's actually maybe something worth noting too, is that he's really, look, they paid George Karl back in the day. I want to say George was one of the highest paid coaches kind of at the end of his run.
Mm-hmm.
And then they moved on, and Brian Shaw certainly wasn't. And Malone, when he started, wasn't. They've never really paid GMs. That's why they let Masai Ujiri walk.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they couldn't really get on the same page with Tim Connolly. Calvin Booth was paid, I'm sure, on the bottom end. I'm not really sure why, because we know that the Cronkies are one of the richer ownership groups in the NBA, but they operate the way they operate. They put money on the court and on the field, on the ice, and we understand that. So they're not like shortchanging themselves in terms of being on the high side of that. Although we can talk about second apron, third apron, down the road with the NBA salary cap specifically. But like when Tim Connolly got a raise, he was the lowest paid GM by a mile.
Mm-hmm.
They doubled his salary here on one of his extensions. He was still the lowest paid GM even after getting his salary doubled. So that, kind of going back to, I touched on it, but that's one of the things Josh talked about that maybe we can get to here, was when I asked about the consideration. So Chloe, I don't know if you can load up that clip about Josh. How much does being a previous GM like a Bob Myers, it's going to cost you upwards of 13, 15 million bucks a year, more than any head coach you're going to pay.
Mm-hmm.
And you're still paying Malone, and or a Tim Connolly, if he's got an out in his deal, he's not going to leave Minnesota for less money. So you're going to be north of 10 million there. So here's Josh answering my question about, do you want a GM that has previous general manager experience?
We're gonna go through a search for sure at the end of the year. I think I need to be as open-minded as possible. We've worked really hard to put ourselves in this position, a position that we've never been in before. I talked about, some of the changes in 2013, but some of the toughest moments that I ever had in my position with the Nuggets would be going through some of those early transitional phases and coming out to talk to our fans and our supporters. And they would be like, Josh, we just want a good team. And we just want to be able to compete. And I just would look at them and I would say, I'm sorry, I believe there's more. And eventually we got there to where everyone believes there's more. And now we're operating at a standard of it that's a championship level. So I need to be aware of what's out there, how to make this team better in all facets. And so, back to my main message, season's not over yet, but once the season is over, I think we're going to be as open-minded as we've ever been about everything. But I think it's important to note that right now, not part of the announcements last week or along the lines of Coach Adelman, but I have named Ben Tenzer interim GM for the time being. And that's just simply done because Ben has been, he started here as an intern way back 2007, 8, 9 maybe. And I know in the moment that Ben knows what I want and we need. And so Ben's going to be at the helm for the playoffs. And I have full confidence in his ability right now. But once the season's over, I'm going to sit down, take a few days break to really think about everything, and then we're going to go attack it like we always do.
Love that. I mean, again, I think right now, and this is the expectation, there's still business to be done right now, and I think that's in order to confirm that they made the right decision, they still have to be invested and all in this season, because that was one of the reasons they said that they did what they did. We're not giving up on this season. We still want to make a deep run. We still believe in this team. So there's a lot that still needs to be handled in this year. You look at the Western Conference and it might be scarier than tax day. And that's saying something, because I'm not sure if you guys are feeling what I'm feeling at this time of the year, but I'm not a huge fan of April. Most specifically, April 15th. I hate that day. But we got to listen. Tax day is tomorrow, the scariest day of the year, maybe
Jackie
ever.
Robinson Day too.
However, he's not scary though. Tax day, terrifying. What is the bright side of this week outside of tax day is that we dodged the Timberwolves. Woo!
Yeah, I know when we get in the playoffs. Can I explain about Ben real quick?
Yes.
So Ben Tenzer, like he said, has been there since he's an intern, pretty much since I got to town covering the team. Like you said, 07, 08. Ben went to law school in the middle of his time with the Nuggets as he was like low-level personnel to become their cap guy, and then comes back from law school and has been their cap guy. He's also the GM of the Denver Gold. And to explain why it makes sense that he's the GM right now is because Ben will keep being the cap guy no matter what. If they were to promote Tommy Balcetis, who's been there forever as assistant GM with Arturas Karnisovas, who's now the GM with the Bulls, who was an assistant with Tim Connolly, but Arturas stayed through the Calvin tenure as well, or Tommy did, and then they decided to move on. That can screw up some of your pre-draft stuff. And so the Nuggets have scouts, they have area scouts, regional scouts, all that, and you've got your pre-draft stuff going on here in the coming weeks. So you need to make sure that you're at the various pre-draft events, including the big combine in Chicago. And so bringing Ben, who's already in the house, in the building anyway, but who's also the GM of the Denver Gold as the G League season is over, he doesn't have other stuff on his plate necessarily. He doesn't have to negotiate contracts. Tommy still has his responsibilities, but it allows Ben to kind of oversee the scouting department without really missing a beat or changing Tommy's role specifically. So Tommy will certainly be a GM candidate, but there's also a scenario where a new GM gets hired and I don't say cleans house, but moves on from some of the top tier assistant GM types, personnel people that have been there for a long time, because they might just have their own guys that they're used to work or gals that they're used to working with. And so Ben makes a lot of sense in the short term as the interim GM, because he's not going to go anywhere, because he'll continue to be the team's capologist, if you will. And so I wasn't expecting that part of the answer. And then they put out a tweet, well, congratulating Ben on interim GM on his interim GM role, from the Nuggets. So that all makes sense. You have to have somebody do it, because Josh doesn't want to get in on the pre-draft day-to-day. He wants to find the next GM and next head coach and focus on this team.
Yeah. There's probably multiple things that right now Josh has to focus on. One being the season that they're in, which we're going to get to in a second, and also being what do the next 3, 4, 5 seasons look like? Because you do want to think longevity in his situation. Really quickly, speaking of longevity of your home, perhaps. You never know when and where the hail will hit when the summer starts to come. And listen, also in April, I was just talking upstairs about the fact that April, I'm shopping for wedding venues, and booking in April is terrifying because you never know what you're going to get, especially here in Colorado. The last thing you want to be doing is getting caught scrambling when the weather does decide to hit you. You want to be prepared. Battling your neighbors for an appointment, or being left with no other option than one of those storm-chasing roofers that comes to your town. If you guys do not remember, I think it was last year, there was like a tornado that hit Highlands Ranch. So these people are important. Make your call before the storm. Stay prepared. Call Accurate America at 303-900-ROOF. They'll partner with you on navigating insurance. They'll provide quick, professional, and knowledgeable service using the latest technology and 3D modeling. And their work is guaranteed as long as you own your home. Don't scramble at the last minute. Call Accurate America at 303-900-ROOF before the storm. Accurate America, experts in roofing and exteriors. Shout out to our friends over at Accurate America. That being said, let's move on a little bit, BK, to the next portion of our show, which is looking at the playoff picture as a whole. We'll get a little bit more specifically into the Denver side of things, but I do want to get into the playoff picture as a whole. We've talked many, many, many times about the Western Conference specifically, but the Eastern Conference also still exists, and there is talent over there. I know I talk about the West more than the East, one, because the Denver Nuggets play in the West, but also because the West has been tighter.
Yeah.
The West has been a little bit more like at any given moment, there's a team that's shaking things up in the West, whereas the East, it's stayed a little bit more consistent throughout the season, given that the Cavs and the Celtics have kind of remained at the top, and then you've got the Knicks in the mix, but have they really beaten any tough contending teams? Not really, so they kind of feel unproven at this point.
They beat the Nuggets twice.
Well,
right?
I'd like to think
that they definitely beat them in New York.
They did. They whooped us here at home.
Yeah.
whooped.
But
But my point is, you've got a little bit more of an obvious breakdown of levels, if you will,
Yeah,
in the East, whereas the West, it just feels like a bloodbath. So let's talk a little bit, BK. And you can also explain some of I was doing my best to explain the play-in on the live show yesterday.
And I was trying to help you. Turns out I wasn't even all the way right.
We weren't all the way correct. So let's break down that. You're really good at that. So why don't you talk through kind of what the play-in looks like, and then we'll get into some of these matchups.
Yeah, so we can even leave those up there while we're chatting, I guess, just to give you an idea of who's playing who and when.
Yeah.
Again, all those times are Eastern, so we know that 1:30 will be Clippers and Nuggets. It's a busy sports day Saturday. You got the Buffs spring game, snow or otherwise. We'll see if the weather affects. The Rockies have a day game, which is often abnormal on a Saturday.
The Nuggets playoff game.
They're all playing at the same time, and we don't even know when the Avalanche are going to play. They're in Dallas. Could be Saturday, could overlap with some of this, depending on when the NHL, because they haven't set their times yet.
I have a feeling that we're going to have a very busy
day.
It's
going to be very busy Guerrilla Sports Saturday, but hey, we love sports and we love covering them.
Yes, we do.
But okay, so the play-in, and you can see where it says 7 seed, 8 seed. Well, whether you're looking west or east, they're all playing Sunday, and the reason why is in previous versions of the play-in tournament, regardless of night. So last year, I just looked it up. When you had the Pelicans and the Lakers and all that, and Zion played great, but then got hurt right at the very end. You had the West playing Tuesday and Thursday. So you had 7 plays 8. Winner goes on to be 7. 9 plays 10. The winner of that plays 8 in 8's home court. That's 8 at the time. Then the winner of that. So it's Tuesday, Thursday in the West, Wednesday, Friday in the East. That's how it was last year. This year, to reward, if you will, the teams that actually finished 7th and 8th, both leagues or both conferences, East and West. So I've got it written down here. So Hawks and Magic, they finished 7 and 8. They play the early game Tuesday. Then the Warriors host the Grizzlies in the late game.
On Tuesday.
Yeah, those games are at 5:30 and 8 Mountain Time. Your 7 and 8s play each other. They all get to play Tuesday. Wednesday, you've got Kings hosting the Mavs is the late game. Heat at Bulls is the early game. Then those second games, if you will, from the play-in, so the loser of the 7-8 and the winners of the 9-10 are playing Friday. So no NBA games Thursday at all.
Interesting.
Nothing. Because that's how it went, Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday, Friday. Thus, that's giving more of an advantage plus a little bit of rest by a day.
Yeah.
And there's certainly a world where obviously the Grizz or the Hawks win, and Orlando to Atlanta is a pretty quick flight anyway, but they get home, get the rest, and then host the game Friday.
Okay.
Versus these teams that are playing Wednesday, no matter what, they're then going on the road, even if they're coming from home. If it's the Kings, they'd much rather just drive an hour to San Francisco, I'd imagine, if the Dubs lose Tuesday. But yeah, so that's, I think, smart by the NBA.
Yeah.
You're saying, hey, in the old world, 7 and 8 had already made the playoffs.
Right.
Now 7 and 8 is being rewarded at least with a little bit more of a break before they would either play. So the Warriors, if they win Tuesday, they're not playing until Sunday. And so
they get a good little bit of rest.
Yeah,
there.
because they could have mixed and matched and had this. The 7 seeds will be decided by Tuesday.
Right.
So they could have had the 7, if they wanted that matchup, the 7 seeds could have played Saturday if they wanted to split up.
And the 7 seed, the Warriors would then go, if they won, they would go on to play Houston.
They'd play Houston, and then whoever were to win of those final 3 teams, Grizz, obviously Dallas or Sacramento, they're playing number 1. Anyway, so and this is all that we have. The NBA has not sent out anything beyond
this
Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah.
But there it is, and we know that the Nuggets.
I would like to guess that the Nuggets and the Clippers game being Saturday would mean you'd get probably a Monday, Tuesday game for game 2. That's an assumption. Obviously, that game would be still in Denver.
Yeah.
2-2-1-1. Yeah. So
just like last year, the Nuggets will have games at home this first weekend, and then they'll be on the road during the NFL draft.
Yep.
Among other things. Here, let's do this real quick before we get into the Nuggets Clippers.
And we're also, while we're talking about the whole playoff picture, I'll go ahead and rattle off some of those NBA hot takes that people drop.
Oh yeah. What are some of the best hot takes?
Why don't you give me your initial thoughts, BK? When you're looking at this, I will tell you, I just saw yesterday that the Bucks are actually the underdog against the Pacers to win that. I actually don't mind sprinkling on the Bucks in that spot. I don't ever like to underestimate that team. What are your immediate thoughts on like how you think things are going to shape out? I mean, even let's go past play-in, the series that we do know that are available to us. How do you, outside of the Denver Nuggets, how do you see some of these shaking out?
I'm not going to pick against the Bucks, even though the Pacers.
I'm not either.
Yeah,
I'm not either.
Played well, but if they're healthy enough with the way Giannis has played of late, he's just such a monster, and they don't really have a good answer for him.
Agreed.
I know that he obviously doesn't score from the outside the way other superstars do, but he can be so dominant. And if Dame's right,
yeah, getting the Bucks as an underdog, I'm going to take that probably every single time.
And we'll get to it, but the Clippers are underdogs too, so we'll get to that here in a bit. Pistons, Knicks. I don't love the Knicks to make a deep run because of the way Tibbs
I don't either.
plays them, but I do like him to get past the Pistons. The Pistons did something that I think is interesting. You pretty much have to live in the Great Lakes or Canada. If you have a New York address on your credit card, they're not letting you buy tickets in Detroit. Now, I don't know how many New Yorkers are jumping on planes, but even if you're a Knicks fan from somewhere else, I don't know how you get in that building without going through, secondary market, but they can't control who buys on StubHub or any of those. Wolves, Lakers, that has a chance.
I like the Wolves in that one. I don't know
with
what
the way
it
they
is.
shoot,
Something in my
the
gut.
way they play D, you would think if you can keep Austin Reeves in check, you kind of know what you're getting with LeBron and Luka.
Yep, you know that.
Julius Randle, though, who I think has played really well, especially of late, he's relied on being bigger than a lot of guys covering him.
Mm-hmm.
The Lakers have nothing but dudes bigger than him.
Right.
So that's kind of nullified.
To me, that's size versus size. Those are two pretty big teams that play pretty physical and play pretty strong, and they also have shooters. So I could just see that going either way.
But Anthony Edwards against
I don't
those
like
two
fading
superstars.
Anthony Edwards ever. And in the playoffs, he just gets that different energy about him that's very, very terrifying to me. So playoffs, Anthony Edwards, but then he also got LeBron James, Luka. I mean, again, it's just that might be arguably the most enticing and exciting matchup that I think we've got ahead of us.
Okay, so who wins the series?
I'm going Wolves.
Yeah,
I'm going Wolves. I am.
Game 7 is going to be in LA
because I do think it's going to be the starters on both of those teams you trust for the most part.
Yeah.
It's going to be that second unit.
Well, you got to like the Timberwolves bench better.
I do. That's my point. I like the second unit that the Wolves have got, and I do think that'll be the X factor in that series. So I'm going to go Wolves against the Lakers.
All right, I think we have to kind of press pause on the 8 seeds versus the ones real quick. Let's do the 2 7s versus 2s. Celtics, no matter what, are going to play the Hawks or Magic.
Yeah.
I don't think either team has a chance against the Celtics. The Magic are an interesting roster construct. The Hawks have no chance.
Yeah.
Against the Celtics.
I do want to say one thing really quick now that we're on the East. If you guys remember correctly, I did, as one of my hot takes, my Victor Wembanyama one was bad. And then I also said that the Magic would seed higher than the Knicks. So that didn't transpire. However, one of my bigger hot takes from earlier in the season, and I filmed this at Ball Arena, was that the 76ers would not make the playoffs. And I nailed that.
Yeah, they're a bit of a disaster.
Yeah, they've been a huge disaster. But there was a lot of people that were like, oh, Paul George, whoa, we're going all the way.
It's worth noting.
It's the same thing people said when the Suns got Bradley Beal. Like, I actually am on my computer right now, and people are like quote tweeting a tweet that I had years ago where I said, did the Suns just get worse? Yes. And people were dragging me when I tweeted that. And here I am feeling pretty good about that take. So yeah, 76ers not making the playoffs was something I said before the season started. And that was my one hot take of the 3 that actually hit. So I did have 2 that were wrong. Victor Wembanyama didn't finish the season, so that one couldn't really happen the way that I hoped it would. And then I thought the Magic would be a little bit better. You brought up the Magic, so I was just kind of saying I thought they were going to be a little bit more competitive.
Only because you mentioned the Sixers and it ties into the Nuggets. No, the Nuggets aren't trading for Joel Embiid, so you don't have to worry about that. But this was pointed out to me by somebody last week when I brought up Bob Myers. Bob Myers is consulting, or did last year, I don't know if he's still consulting, for the Washington Commanders football team, and was, I believe, in their war room at the draft. Not that he's some great football personnel guy, because he's been in basketball forever, but I guess if there's some principles that you have, clearly Adam Peters didn't mind him being in the room in Washington, but Josh Harris owns the Commanders.
Yeah.
He's the majority owner, obviously Magic and all that. Well, Josh Harris also owns the Devils. I don't think Bob Myers is going to go be the GM of the Devils, and the Sixers.
Mm-hmm.
And Josh Harris has plenty of money as well. Would Josh Harris pry Bob Myers from TV if he decides he's had enough of Daryl Morey, and could that be a landing spot for Bob Myers, even if it's not this year, but next year, perhaps that he's the next GM of the Sixers, not the Nuggets, especially if we think the Nuggets aren't going to write a $13 to $15 million check per year for Bob Myers, that he could end up with the Sixers. So I don't think we like the Magic or the Hawks to beat the Celtics. The 7th seed in the West is the Rockets. If the Warriors win and they're healthy enough, I know Jimmy Butler looked banged up by the end of that game, I can't write the Warriors off against the Rockets. I would write the Grizzlies off. If the Grizzlies somehow win Tuesday, I don't like their chances in the next round or in the actual first round.
Right.
But the Warriors, I think, have an opportunity. The Rockets are the best defense in basketball. We didn't see it yesterday.
Well, I have a ticket for the Golden State Warriors to come out of the West that I placed maybe a month ago.
Okay.
Because I just had that,
How much money did you put on it? Or
I don't know. I could pull
what'd
it up.
you get it at?
It's I got it at plus maybe 13 or 1600.
Good value. I don't think you're going to win your bet, but it's good value.
Well, what makes you say that, BK?
I just don't think they have enough depth and health. I just don't trust that Steph, Draymond, and Jimmy Butler can stay healthy to win 3 playoff series in the West.
Now, if they do stay healthy, do you think they could come out of the West?
Yeah, maybe because of those 3 guys specifically, and then the kind of the younger guys around them. We're talking about Bob Myers, but the pieces they put in place in recent years, and they would get the Lakers or T-Wolves in the second round. Potentially. And if it's the Lakers, I like their chances against the Lakers. Even if the Lakers have beaten them of late, I think they've beaten the Lakers as well. And so then you all bets are off when you get to the conference finals. I don't love that bet, but it's good value. So I just don't think you're going to win it.
Well, I think you're a hater, but that's besides the point. I do want to, I'm mostly kidding. I do want to get into some of the hot takes. I asked NBA Twitter, yes, it's Twitter to me always, some of their favorite NBA hot takes, and I want to feature a couple of them and talk them through with the UBK. There's quite a few, but we'll use this one as an example. Celtic Green 823 says the Clippers will eliminate the Nuggets in the first round. We're going to get into non-Nugget stuff in a second, but your immediate reaction to be honest with you, that doesn't really feel like a hot take.
No, we heard Josh Kroenke.
That doesn't really feel like a hot take to me. I'm sorry. I love my team. I love my Nuggets, but given their struggles, given their injuries all season long, given the way that we've watched the Clippers and the Nuggets match up many times this season, the Nuggets winning 3 of 5, all of those games played without a man named Kawhi Leonard. Yeah, that doesn't really feel like a hot take to me. But immediate reaction, because we're going to break down BK on a deeper level, that series specifically and how we think that's going to go. But are you kind of with me that doesn't really feel like a hot take?
No, because the Clippers are the hottest team in basketball, essentially. They've won 15 of 18. And if we go back 17 of 20, 17 of 21, point being, they haven't lost. They had 2 losses at the beginning of March. I did this backwards. Oh, they're even hotter than I thought. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They've won 18 of 21. Their last loss was March 30th, the day before my birthday. Then they lost March 23rd. They lost March 11th, and they lost a couple games to start March to the Lakers and Suns. So they've only got a handful of losses. And in the month of April, all 8 games that they played, 7 games they played, they won all of them. And they won all of them. None of them were close except for yesterday's overtime game. They won by 16. They won by 25, 23. They won by 21. They won by 5, won by 7. Oh, they squeaked out one against Sacramento Friday too. But the point is, a healthy Kawhi Leonard, that's something we haven't seen.
Right.
The Nuggets are 3-2. They got that extra game because of the in-season tournament, and you have to mix and match the schedule with teams that advance. And so you're going to play a team that's relatively close by a conference opponent. And so they end up playing 1 extra game. That gives them the tiebreaker. Otherwise, they would have been tied 2-2, and you have to go to other tiebreakers. But the head-to-head tiebreaker, all 5 of those games, including the 2 early losses, one game 2 here on that Saturday afternoon game to the Clippers early in the year, and then they lost a few weeks later in LA. All of those losses, or all of those games, all 5 We saw Kawhi Leonard 0 times. Don't know if he'll stay healthy. I believe the last 4 years he's been on the bench during the playoffs in street clothes. But James Harden, a healthy Kawhi Leonard, and Nuggets killer Norman Powell, and Zubats has been playing out of his mind.
Norman Powell looks like freaking a goat when he plays the Denver Nuggets. And we know the perimeter defense by the Nuggets is something they've struggled with this season, but we're also seeing kind of a rejuvenated version of this team. So I'm hoping that the version, just like the Clippers playing without Kawhi Leonard, now that he's back, it's like a completely new team that this Nuggets team has to face. I also hope that, given what the Nuggets have gone through in the last couple of weeks and kind of finding this refreshed, rejuvenated version of themselves, also means that the Clippers are going to be facing a Nuggets team that they are not familiar with, because this Nuggets team is playing, if they play the way they've played over the last 3 games, the Clippers are not going to be seeing the same Nuggets team that they've seen many times this season. So both teams kind of meeting a team for the first time, if you will, because Kawhi Leonard is back and healthy, and the Nuggets have rid themselves of tensions and drama and are playing what I would say way better basketball right now, much more team-oriented basketball. So both teams kind of seeing newer and more improved. The glow-up version of the Nuggets and the Clippers will see each other for the first time on Saturday, is what I'm trying to say.
But hey, real quick, I am looking at Zubats' numbers.
Yeah.
He's been really good, not just on the glass, but 22 and 17, 17 points and 11, 20 and 11, 24 and 20, 25 and 10, 14 and 13, 17 and 10, 18 and 20 rebounds. He had 20 rebounds. He's had 20 rebounds 3 times since March, since calendar turned to March. And he's been in double-digit rebounds every game but one in the last 3 months, and only 4 games since the new year that he hasn't been double-digit rebounds, and into the teens, if not 20s, most of his games. So for as good as James Harden is, as good as we know Kawhi Leonard can be, and again, we know how good Norman Powell is, at least against the Nuggets, Zubats is going to be an X factor for sure, because he's going to body up Joker, and he's going to play him one-on-one. He's going to at least make Joker's life challenging.
Yeah.
And he can score down low too.
2 more hot takes for you. This one has to do with the Eastern Conference over that way. We don't spend a ton of time on this show talking about them, but Tyler Schwartz and Mike Rowe. Mike Rowe has the Nuggets and the Pacers in the finals, and Tyler Schwartz says Pacers are winning it all. This feels like an extremely blistering 3rd-degree burn hot take. I cannot see the Pacers winning it all.
Me neither.
I guess I don't even see the Pacers making it past the Bucks. Maybe that's the hot take. Maybe the hot take is me, that I think the Bucks are going to win that series. Is there a world, BK, where the Pacers win it all? Because there was more than one hot take dropped under my tweet in regards to the Pacers.
Well, and they're in that 4-5, so that means after they beat the Bucks, if they were to beat the Bucks, then they're likely playing the Cavaliers.
I don't see it.
Well, and that's the thing too. So we didn't talk about. We might have touched on this a little bit the other day, but on Thursday. But 1 and 8, no matter who the 8 is, I guess again, if it's the Warriors, it just gets interesting. But the Thunder have barely lost all year. The Cavs have barely lost all year. So the idea that they're going to lose 9 times, I'm sorry. Yeah, 9 times if you go before you even get, and then lose a 10th game, if you will. I guess they could advance real easy, but
they haven't done that all year.
But really, and maybe easier math is that they're going to lose 4 times out of 7 in any series, especially early, seems almost impossible in the first or even the second round. Now, OKC realistically could be facing your Denver Nuggets in the second round, and the Nuggets have played them tough. They played them tough even in losses.
Yeah.
The Sunday game there that then turned into a Monday win. Game 1, the opener, it was a tough game, and then they beat them without Jamal Murray later in the year.
Yep.
Maybe no AG in that game as well.
Yeah,
in that
he went out early in the first game and then wasn't available in the second.
Yeah, so you know that they can beat them.
Yeah.
But it's going to be hard to pick against the Cavs and take the Pacers in the second round if they get past the Bucks. And if Tyler's right, I hope he has a ticket, because I'm sure those are good odds.
I'm sure they're great. Okay, final hot take, and then we'll do a little bit more talking about Denver versus LA, and then we'll get out of here because I will have another show on Thursday where we can talk more about all of this, and we'll have some things to react to after Tuesday's games as well. But last thing I want to say, that this is from a parody account. NAF Warrior 10 says Lakers get swept in round 1. Now I'm going to tell you more specifically why this is a hot take. I actually think the Timberwolves can and likely will beat the Lakers in the first round. I think the X factor in that series, because both teams have strength, have size, they've got shooters. I think the reason I lean towards Minnesota is I think the X factor in that series is going to be the second unit. Whose bench do you trust more? And I just happen to favor the Timberwolves bench a little bit more than the Lakers. So I'm giving Minnesota the edge in that series. However, the Lakers getting swept in the first round does feel a little bit more of a hot take, in my opinion. I don't see them getting swept. I see this series going the distance in the same way that the Timberwolves were dominating away games against the Nuggets last season. I don't think they're going to have a problem not having home court advantage. Anthony Edwards in the playoffs, he's just legit. And I love watching him play basketball, especially when we enter the playoffs. However, the Lakers getting swept, we know we've seen them get swept before. Go Denver. Do you think they could get swept by the Timberwolves in the first round? That feels unlikely to me.
It feels unlikely to me as well. Could they? Sure.
Yeah.
Will they? I don't think so. JJ Redick has shown us he's a good coach.
Absolutely.
Beyond just having LeBron, which makes everything easier. Now having Luka as well as LeBron, that makes everything easier. But he's gotten his guys to buy in and play really good defense.
Yep.
They obviously run their offense through one of those guys. But again, let's remember this because we talked about it after that trade went down. It's going to matter even more in the playoffs now. Assuming that they're both healthy, there is never going to be a time when LeBron or Luka aren't on the court.
Yeah, no.
And so because of that, you've got, two of the best playmakers, scorers. I mean, LeBron is the best scorer of all time, at least statistically. He's done it more than anyone in the history of the game. And Luka, all NBA 5 years in a row, certainly not going to make it this year. He didn't play enough games. One of those guys is always going to be on the court. Anthony Edwards can't always be on the court. Take Anthony Edwards off. Yeah, Julius Randle's out there. And Julius is a nice player. He's been an all-star. He's not in that same stratosphere as any of those three guys.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that because Anthony Edwards comes off the court at times, and there's never a world where LeBron or Luka come off the court, I won't be surprised if the Lakers win, but I certainly know they're not going to get swept this time around.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like I said, I'm giving the Wolves the edge, but I don't see a sweep. But again, I asked for hot takes. That definitely feels like a hot take. And we know anything can happen in the playoffs. That is the beauty of it. And what I love about the playoffs in the NBA differently than the NFL is it really does feel, and I'm not saying that you don't get this in the NFL, but it feels like you are genuinely always going to get, I don't want to say always. You can never really say always in sports, but it does feel like you get the best team out of every series because you've got 7 opportunities to compete. So if you can be that team that rises to the occasion time after time after time and you compete, you deserve to move on. Sometimes it's a bad game by one team in the playoffs in the NFL, and it's like, that team actually felt like the best team in the AFC, but they just dropped the ball, right? So it's a little different to me, NFL versus NBA, but in the NBA, you've got 7 opportunities. So you would hope and pray that by the time you get to the finals, you have the 2 best teams in the NBA. And that's usually how it works. I get seeding, you kind of dodge some of the best ones, and some people have a easier route to the finals than others, but again, you get that by dominating all season. So
do you want to make a finals prediction right now? Just the matchup?
Oh my gosh. I so badly want to say Denver. BK, can you just entertain? I know you're not a Nuggets fan and I am. Can you just entertain or at least tell me your thoughts on, is it possible that Denver makes the finals?
I think it's certainly possible, even though plenty of people are now picking them to lose in round 1 against the Clippers. It's tough to trust James Harden and Kawhi Leonard. And I know we're going to talk about Russ, and actually we have Josh talking about him as well. The idea that Russ might cost you a game here or there. I don't know if they're going to put that opportunity on Russ necessarily, unless they need to because Jamal gets banged up or because of foul trouble that he has to close out games. I'm not saying he won't close out games.
David Adelman has made it very, very clear whoever is playing the best basketball is finishing the game because we're trying to win basketball games. It's very simple. In Sacramento, it wasn't Russ, but against the Grizzlies, it was. That's why you saw Russ finishing the game. So I think the more fans are trying to put that pressure on Russ to be that guy, you're going to be disappointed because that's not what the Nuggets need him for.
And that's not what they brought him in for. They brought him in
Correct.
to play 17 minutes a game, and he ends up playing almost 30, and that is because of Michael Malone.
Yep.
Not trusting Jalen Pickett. Now, I'm not saying that I trust Jalen Pickett
I think a lot of that was spite as well.
more than Russ, but had the season gone differently in terms of how minutes were distributed, Russ maybe wouldn't have faced some of the scrutiny he's faced in other places late in the season here,
Right.
because he was thrust into action. And some of that was that Jamal Murray was hurt,
Mm-hmm.
and you just had to make a call, and that was a call that Malone made. But why I think they could have win 3 series and get to the finals, well, it starts with Nikola Jokic, and you got the best player on the planet.
Duh.
So there's that.
Yep.
And we may find along the way that he doesn't win MVP, and while he doesn't care, his teammates care. And speaking of teammates, they've clearly shown more effort on the defensive side of the ball,
So much more.
more than we've seen consistently, especially early in these 3 games under David Adelman. And we know that defense is about communication. Their communication feels like it's at an all-time high. If you were listening, and I was in the car for a little bit, catching some of Jason Kosminski's call Friday, and he said this is the most he's seen them talk. And then I heard his interview with Aaron Gordon post-game, and he said that AG basically agreed, like, yeah, this is on us as much as anything else. And so Joker being even more vocal and the rest of the team kind of following that mold, that, hey, this is our team taking that ownership. They're talking, and it's about effort. Well, they have the ability to give the effort just if they choose to. And if they were just kind of over Malone, they weren't, even though they're professionals and are getting paid to go win games. And then also the communication piece. So, yeah, I think because of that, all of those things, if they can have just enough shooting, you can't make 5 threes and win too many playoff games. But if they make, we know the number's 12, if they make 12 or more, they'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
But even if they're making 10 or 11 versus 5 and just playing better defense, and absolutely they can win the West.
I'm going to say then, I haven't landed on who is going to be in the finals for the West, but it's between 2 teams for me. It's between the Warriors or it's between the Nuggets.
Okay.
That's what my gut is telling me.
You really want to win that bet?
And that's just how I feel. So I'm going to go Warriors or Nuggets. And this probably is going to be a hot take, but my finals prediction, Warriors or Nuggets and the Celtics.
Okay.
So the Celtics out east and then either the Warriors or the Nuggets in the West. What is your finals prediction?
I'm not ready to do that with the Warriors. I'm going to say it's either the Thunder or the Nuggets. Feels about right.
Okay.
The winner of that second round series. I just don't see the Rockets getting there, and they could lose as early as the first round. And then I do think it's the Celtics to go back. They've just got too many guys in the playoffs that have done it. Jason Tatum will put on his playoff cape. Obviously, Jaylen Brown is a hell of a player. Whatever they can get from Porzingis.
Yep.
Al Horford still has plenty left in the tank. And then Derek White and Drew Holiday certainly have the pedigree. And then guys like Peyton Pritchard off the bench as well. It's hard to pick against them, even though the Cavs have played so well all year.
You know that sound on TikTok, for those of you TikTokers out there, that says, prepare to be sick of me. Have you heard that?
No.
PK's terrified.
Well, look, I'm not going to pretend like I don't.
He just saw a ghost.
No, I'm not going to pretend like I don't go on TikTok, but I'm not on there enough to.
Okay, well, that sound, the prepare to be sick of me. If the Denver Nuggets make the finals, prepare to be sick of me.
You're going to be insufferable.
I will be.
Not to me necessarily, but
oh no, to you as well.
Maybe, but I'm.
You might have my number blocked by the end of it all.
I doubt it.
He's like, nah.
No, I'm always in the market to help you find pants. So
yeah, that's the thing. BK, every time I get dressed to come into work, the one thing that I think in my head is, what comment is BK gonna make today about my outfit? You know that grandparent you have that's like, oh, did you get those holy jeans on a discount? That's BK. Every time I walk in. Last week I was Michael Jackson Thriller.
Which
today,
the Matrix
because I'm wearing
call.
a longer sweater, he can't see my pants. He said, "Did you forget your pants at home?" One other time, you asked if I was wearing pajamas.
I just wasn't sure. They look comfy.
So
my wife has pajamas that look almost identical.
Perfect. Well, they weren't pajamas, but
hey, I'm
all
about being relaxed at work. I mean, I wear jeans or shorts. The other day, I wasn't planning on being on camera. I was in sweatpants and a Gorilla Sports quarter zip on the football show.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, it's
But no, I'm not
again,
blocking you. I'm not blocking your number. But to people that are either Nuggets haters or Liv haters or whatever,
they want to see me.
if they want to
Yeah.
hate you more, watch the Nuggets get to the finals, and you'll be easy to dislike.
Oh my gosh. And at the end of the day, I know that I'm pretty easy to dislike, but I also think I'm pretty easy to like. Like I think
Yeah.
the people that know me in real life are like, I don't really have many problems with people. Like I just don't. I stay in my lane, I do my thing, I do my job, I go home, and
Fall
that's
asleep on
about
the
it.
couch and not watching movies.
I can't stay awake for movies for the life of me. I actually watched a really good movie that you should watch. Everyone should watch actually, and then we'll get out of here. It's on, maybe it's Amazon Prime Video. G20.
Oh, with Viola Davis playing
Yes,
a badass version of
Madam
the president.
and
Yeah.
it was really good. We watched that last night.
It feels a little far fetched.
Yeah, but it was cool. It was well done. It was a great cast. Very action packed. It was.
Yeah, I like movies like that. I'll likely throw it on maybe Thursday when there's no
NBA.
basketball
Exactly.
and nothing else really going on.
Exactly.
Do we want to finish up with Josh Kroenke's comments about Russ?
Yeah, like let's go back really quickly before we play that, and then I promise we'll get out of here. Before we play that, I do think the role that Russ was intended to have in Denver needs to be reminded to people across the board as we enter the world of playoffs. I think it's so easy to already start building the narrative that Russ is going to be a letdown. Russ is not going to be clutch for you. He shouldn't have to be those things, number one. But number two, I don't even think that's what the Nuggets intended on making him. I do think in all of this back end tension BS, Russ was kind of collateral damage in the sense that he was being used by Malone in ways to just spite Calvin Booth. And in turn, that may have caused some issues, maybe within the team, maybe within, our perception of Russell Westbrook's role here in Denver. But I think if we can very quickly remind ourselves what his role was on this team and what it's probably going to be in the playoffs, I think you have less room for disappointment. I think when you set the bar too high and your expectations are too high, not to say he can't meet that, but also let's be realistic that when you've got a healthy Jamal Murray, you don't need Russ to be what Russ was when Jamal was injured. So I think as long as we can keep that in our brains as we enter the world of playoffs, you're less likely to feel like Russ let you down in crunch time. Russ, I don't think, was ever brought to Denver to be our crunch time hero. I don't think that was ever his role. So let's ignore that and understand that he has done a lot of great things on this team, and he has filled in a lot of gaps of things that the Nuggets were missing. But sounds like Kroenke spoke on Russ today. So let's take a listen to what Kroenke has to say about Russ, and then we'll debrief, and then we'll get out of here. Let's check it out.
I mean, I can't say enough good things about my experience with Russ. I can't speak for anywhere where he's been elsewhere, but, when it first became a possibility to have that guy on our team and he and I started talking, I was just like, I just am happy to have you in the locker room because now I just know you won't be breaking our back anymore. Some of the plays that he's made over the years. But to actually answer your question, no, I mean, Russ has been nothing but a positive for this group. If anything, the way that I would describe Russ is, every year we have, a different, I forget how you want to class it, different, bowl of food, bowl of soup, whatever. Russ was a very spicy ingredient for us to add, and we needed it. I thought we needed some spice this year. He's one of the most competitive people and players out there. And I think as long as we're channeling that in the right direction, Russ's heart is 100% always in the right place. Because a lot of guys in our locker room, we do have some young players in there. I mean, I don't know if this is true or not, but I'm sure they grew up looking at Russell Westbrook as one of their idols in a lot of way. And so I think the cool thing about Russ is that one, that competitive fire gets him going. But at this stage, who he is as a person, I think he understands the impact that he can have across the board. And it's just making sure that we're harnessing that and pointing in the right direction. And he's an unbelievable teammate, unbelievable person, and we're lucky to have him.
Yay! Yay! I will say, you guys know I defend Russ a lot.
More than most. That's
more
for
than
sure.
most. And it's funny because I don't ever get online and say I love this player because he's amazing at this or it's just the energy he brings. You know that because Kroenke, Josh just said that BK pointed out that I always just say Kroenke when there's more than one, and I just say Kroenke. I just link them together. They're just a powerhouse of just Kroenke-ness. So that's just what
Also,
I say.
Stan almost never talks. So
I know it's always Josh, but Kroenke. No, Josh. One of the things he just mentioned, which I absolutely agree with, is again, I'm going to throw it to another sound, but this time it's a song. You know, the sound that goes, it's not actually, it's in a song, but it's the one that goes, it gets the people going. Also,
Yeah,
that's
that's
how.
from Blades of Glory. The
Yes, but
ice
it's
skating.
it's
in.
Kanye put it in his song, right?
I'm not gonna pronounce the name of that song. I think they did that just to fuck with people. Because you could have called that song "Ball So Hard" and then put that even in parentheses.
I almost just baited him.
Well,
I didn't even mean to.
I don't think I was ever going to.
Gets the people going. That's what Russ brings. He just gets the people
We're
going.
gonna skate to one song and one song only.
Right. He gets the people going though. And honestly, I think that is what he brought to Denver that was so needed. It's like you've got Jokic, who is that leader, but he leads by example. And he does sometimes, get vocal, but Russ brings that hype element that I feel like we kind of started to get flat soda last year with the Nuggets. They were really fizzy soda and then they were really flat soda. And Russ was the Mentos that we put inside and twisted the cap.
Science. That's a science experiment. Put Mentos inside of a soda.
Woo! I love it. But yes, I think we have to don't change. No, let me word it this way. Don't lower your expectations of what you expect from Russ in the playoffs. Just alter them. Because I do think you can hold Russ to a high standard of knowing what he was brought here to do and holding him to that. But don't expect him to be crunch time superhero, down to the wire, splashing threes. That's not what Denver even brought him here for. So change and alter the expectations you have for him and know that his role is going to be catered to his strengths. And with every strength, there's a weakness. And that's just the nature of the beast.
I would argue that if Russ is in to close out games, it's because of injury.
Correct.
If everything's going the way it's supposed to.
Or the Grizzlies game where he really was cooking. Because you texted me during that game and you said, right now, as it stands, would you keep him in or would you sub him? And I said, based on momentum, I would keep him in.
And they were really good defensively in the closeout part of the fourth quarter, really last 6.5 minutes, almost 7 minutes. No field goals allowed. Only one free throw from Zach Edey. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like the Grizzlies were taking terrible shots, but, it was good defense. Russ is going to give you that. But the subs you probably want to see are like Peyton Watson in for either Christian or more likely MPJ. That's about it. You want Jamal closing out games if you can help it, and you have to have him out there. Typically, you almost always, unless you have a Manu Ginobili, you always want your starters also to be your finishers. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to be your 5 best players. Russ wasn't brought in to be one of the 5 best players. He was brought in to be a spark off the bench, provide depth when needed with the first unit, but he's not supposed to play 29 minutes a game.
Correct.
He's supposed to play 17. And if Jamal's playing 33 to 38, like he's supposed to, then you're not going to get, and CB is playing as well as he's played, very likely candidate for most improved player. The Nuggets have the shirts to prove it. And then obviously MPJ and AG, as well as Joker, then you're not going to even need Russ in crunch time. He's going to be in there because of either foul trouble or injury if he's in there to close out a game, or someone's playing so poorly that you have to get him off the court. But that seems unlikely.
Yep. Yeah. So alter your expectations of Russ and know that it's about to get crazy. We will have another show. I'm not sure you might.
I'm available. The Nuggets will have practice Thursday.
I was going to say, so we'll play Thursday by ear, depending on whether or not we need BK over at Ball Arena or not. But I will certainly be here live in studio. Maybe we could even toss to you there if you can't make it back over here. But we will have a show.
We have the technology.
We do.
Available.
We do, thankfully. We will be live Thursday, 12:30 p.m. Mountain Time, to further discuss in a little bit more detail that Nuggets Clippers series, as well as reacting to the games that we get to see on Tuesday. We'll have no NBA to discuss and Wednesday. Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll have some games that we can break down on Thursday, kind of setting up the playoffs a little bit more, getting a little closer to what those round 1 series will look like. And
also, we will be at every Nuggets playoff game in some form or fashion, and we will be live post-game,
following them in some form or fashion.
Yep. Exactly.
So thank you guys so much for tuning in to another Guerrilla Sports Off Court. I'm Liv Moods. That's Brandon Cristal. And this is presented by Trusted American Mortgage. Trusted American salary-based mortgage consultants are designed to help you save some money. So head to trustedamerican.com to see if they can do that for you, getting you a better interest rate, lowering your monthly payments. Shout out to our friends over there for helping people out. So thank you guys for tuning in. Go Nuggets, and we'll see you Thursday.